are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer with Cugc HQ, and I'd like to welcome you to today's user share. We're going to be talking about Citrix core products and IoT, and what does that mean for you? Our presentation today is going to last about 35 minutes, and we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A discussion. We'd like you to type your questions into the question box of the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will get to those afterwards. Also want to let you know that this session is being recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing on mycugc.org shortly after. Our presenters today are Joe Shonk and Steve Greenberg. They are CTPs and leaders of the Phoenix Metro Cugc group. And at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Steve and Joe and let them introduce themselves and kick everything off.
Hello, I'm Joe Shonk.
And hi, I'm Steve Greenberg. And as you can see, we're from the generation of technologists that has their names as their Twitter handles. It's kind of meaning you're old in the technology world, right, Joe?
Oh, yeah.
We are both based in the Phoenix area. We're active members, leaders of the Phoenix Metro Cugc, which is a great Citrix user group. Very, very active. We have a wide range of, oops, is my screen not showing? Okay.
There you go.
Okay, great. I thought we were showing. That's no problem. What they may have not seen, which I'll go back on, was our Twitter handles and the joke we were making. So feel free to reach out to us. We like to interact with people. We'd love to hear from attendees and follow-ups and ongoing discussion about this topic. As I said, we're from the Phoenix area, Phoenix Metro Group, very, very active group, very wide, diverse range of people. We got off to a really great start, and we're going to throw out something to raise the bar. We had some of the members ask if we could do a Cugc Retreat. And so we're actually trying to put this together where you go away for a couple of days somewhere out of town and totally geek out with master classes. So let's get some discussion going about that offline. So the first question is, what is IoT, Joe? Joe,
Yeah.
What is IoT?
Good question. What is IoT?
Well, a lot of people think it's just toys and stuff, right?
Well, of course it is. Why wouldn't it be?
So of course it is.
I think I'll alleviate that.
BB-8 and toys and controlling things and robots and drones. But it really isn't. It's also real for business, real business applications.
So is it all about microcontrollers, buttons, and blinky LEDs, Steve?
It is, but it's really a lot more than that as well.
So, I mean, we got the Amazon Dash, right? So basically you can take a little button like this Tide button here and put it on your washing machine. So when your laundry detergent gets low, you can push a button and literally get a shipment the next day.
I always wonder, what if your little kids go up and keep pressing it 100 times? Do you get a giant 18-wheeler shipment of Tide? Anyway, but it's a simple idea. Press a button and get a result. It's connected. It's wireless. It's talking to the internet. It's a thing in your environment. Joe, you've done a lot with the Echo. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the Amazon Echo, obviously something from Amazon.
You think?
I've been playing with it quite a bit since they released it last summer. You know, it's a love-hate relationship. It's like being married to a second wife in a sense.
Well, I know one of the problems was you were telling me about it on the phone last night, and then it turned on because you said her name, which we won't mention.
But, you know, if you get one of these particular devices, there's going to be a lot of communication issues, a lot of misunderstandings.
Okay.
And when she said no, it just sounds like she says it with an attitude.
Okay, I think Joe's having some echo issues, but it's a great example of IoT because it has voice interaction, it's internet connected, it's a device that can interact with you, that can give you data, can play you music, you can buy things, that you can ask it Google questions, etc. So a very, very good mass market example. But there is a definition. We'll go with this one, Joe. You want to take it?
Sure, it's basically stating that it's a network of physical devices that can be linked together and have some kind of connectivity to where they can send messages and talk to each other and interact and integrate with each other. But, the Internet of Things, it has a specific definition, but I like to think of it as just a little bit more than just physical devices. And, one of the things Dr. Blue guys like to say is the integration of everything. So not just integrating physical devices, but also virtual ones too.
Right, so it's not just bloopy, bleepy things, lights, and toys. It's really things that matter to you. We might do some work with robots or droids or boards, but it's really anything in your environment. Things like receiving notifications, SMSs, your phone, your Echo, your lights, your security system, whatever matters to you. And that's the thing about IoT that I think is really unique, is when someone does a demo, it's not saying this is IoT. It's saying this is something I care about. It's a thing in my world that I want to interact with or get information from. And so it's really interpreted by you, and that's what's so unique about it. So that points to where it really comes from. IoT is not really just like another wave like client-server computer or virtualization that's being driven by the technology industry and software companies. It really comes from a number of places at once, and one of the key things is the maker culture, the DIY culture, really throughout the world. We're US based, so we're familiar with it, but it's come around in recent years, and it's really, really amazing because of the technology you have. So in the past, there was always woodworking and automotive things, all kinds of DIY type of things, but with the technology of IoT, it now becomes very easy to use low-cost processors and boards, sensors, lights, motors, messaging, so many different things to make whatever you want. And the really big innovation is that the code that runs it, the instructions that allow you to come up with these things and connect the things in your environment are mostly open source and very easy. Things like OctaBlue are literally drag and drop. So it's a way of making technology that's very, very inexpensive and accessible. And when I first encountered it, I called it the consumerization of engineering, where before you maybe, if you wanted to build a device, you would have to prototype something and create boards and burn software into them. But now you can just do it through some simple commands and low-cost hardware.
So you could take, you can go out and go to Amazon and buy an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi. A bunch of them have a bunch of GPIOs on them. You could stick LEDs and motors and stuff in there, and they're fairly cheap. You can get 20, 30 bucks to get yourself a microcontroller and some LEDs. And not only do we see the whole open source aspect of it, you can go to GitHub and literally download 100,000 libraries. And so you got a lot of pre-written libraries to help you interact, not only with the particular devices that you want to plug in, but then to other devices and other APIs. As applications start adding more and more APIs to the software stack, it makes it easier for you to communicate and interact with those different
exactly. Like in the early days of Linux and open source software, it was so specialized, but now you can pretty much find anything you're interested in.
And to make it even
code.
And to make it even easier, you've got a platform like OctaBlue, or if then that, get some online platforms that are, like you said, drag and drop. You don't even have to know how to code, or you don't know. You might need a little bit of scripting, but you don't have to be a JavaScript expert to be able to drag and drop objects on a screen and connect them together with a line.
Exactly, and to the point of it not just being toys, this actual quote comes from Cisco. There's been different projections, but this one you kind of have to pick one because they're all over the map. Global IoT market at 14.4 trillion by 2022, which is an unbelievable number. What other technology in our lifetime has had that kind of projection for growth and for impact on society? That is huge. It's unprecedented, really. It's really equivalent to the Industrial Revolution in many ways. So there's a lot coming, and it's very big. And you're seeing it in massive investments from major technology players throughout the world. They're going in big and hard. And it's also consumer. So as Joe's saying, low-cost things, finding open source code, but it's also large technology companies which are going into it.
And so that kind of leads us to where does Citrix fit into all this? And it was kind of interesting. Steve and I, and a bunch of us were at the summit last year, not the one in this previous January, but about
January 2015.
Yeah, we saw this one little slide in Mark's presentation, and it was an octa-blue slide. It had some LEDs, it had a light bulb, it had the motor. I think it might have a little robot in there, I'm not sure. But you look at the slide, like, what is that? And Mark really never mentioned anything about it. It just kind of was up in the back, you know, in the just a slide that's just in the background. And so he moved on to presentation, and some of us so just hunkering down, getting on our phone, trying to figure out octa-blue. What is this thing?
Is there an E or not? And so we start Googling, going, what is this? And it turns out that they're based here in Arizona. And they were acquired by Citrix in January 2015, right around the time of the summit meetup. And so we started to look into it and connect with them, and we were just blown away what foresight Citrix had to get into this trend before people were really generally aware of it. 1 year later, you hear about it all the time, but it's hard to believe that a year and a half ago, IoT was not really a thing yet. And this is tracking with some big trends that we're seeing in the market, that big data and analytics and IoT itself are key market forces. And enterprise and mobility are ideal use cases. We're talking about automation and information and things giving information, consuming information, giving you feedback, giving you data, having analytics behind it, machine learning. This is all coming together. And the other case that's very, very simple and actually available today, we're going to show a number of examples, is doing simple automations. Alerting and monitoring of systems is a natural use case for IoT because it is things sending and receiving data.
Yeah. Now, if you look at this, the first section is big data analytics and IoT. And if you remember from Quill's keynote at Synergy this year, those are two of the four major components that Citrix is focusing on.
Exactly. A big trend. Now, we hit on that. Well, how would you use some of these things? So let's talk about some real-world applications. We've seen beginnings of use of this in healthcare, mining, and some other places. Some great demonstrations of this occurred with Chris Fleck and team at Synergy this year in Las Vegas, showing, for example, automating a healthcare workflow. So having a patient exam room automated with proximity. A doctor comes in, you can swipe his session onto the existing computer in the room. Patient information comes up. Gaining things like blood pressure and temperature are wireless and automated. Just take the device, take the temperature, and it's entered right into the system. And this might seem like, well, we should already be able to do that, but it doesn't happen in healthcare. We work with a lot of healthcare clients, and they're struggling with productivity and the time it takes to do these operations, and also issues like errors because they get written down and entered. You walk across the room, you take the information. This way, the data you're capturing about a patient is happening right away. Warren Simonson in Australia is doing some amazing stuff in the mining industry, monitoring equipment for safety, alerting people about the status of things, tracking the location of employees. I mean, these are life and death matters and productivity. And it goes on and on. In the classroom. Manufacturing is an area that's had a lot of this type of automation already over the years. Things like tracking work in progress through factories and supply chain. So it's a very proven example. What I think is different about IoT today is the self-service nature of it.
And it's more open. You don't have these closed systems. So, you know, you might buy a Siemens system that can monitor your factory floors and stuff, but you can only talk to itself. If you want to talk to another system, you have to pay big money to write the interfaces to do that, where I think as applications become more open, people have more options at how they want to be alerted, what they want to monitor. I mean, a lot of the products out there have some email alerting systems, some monitoring tools, email, those kind of things. But you get with the manufacturer, the ISP actually will write for you. Where here, we're instead of writing those pieces, they're writing APIs that you can hook into and write your own monitoring and snap-ins and integration between systems.
Exactly, and in the past, it's electrical and mechanical engineers, trained professionals were required to do these things, and they still should do them, and they create these systems. But now, system administrators or business department leaders or hobbyists can get the same functionality, and it's now amplified by the power of the cloud and the internet collaboration. So we'll show you some things about what the community is doing. There's some amazing people out there. We only grabbed just a few examples just to show them to you, but look around and check out some of these guys. So going back to last year, as Joe said, after Summit, we got really amazed at what OctaBlue could do. So for Synergy 2015, Jason Conger and I created the IoT Workspace, and this was a complete desk where everything was IoT-fied, so it was generating or consuming data. So the picture frame was telling you the state of the system, the lights and their colors were telling you what was happening in the data center, the storage cabinet was monitoring the SAN. Everything was connected. That's the true concept of the Internet of Things. The little cat was kind of the monitor of end user performance, and when things went really bad, he went kind of crazy and started shooting lasers. It was a fun example of showing you taking things in your environment and telling you about information that you care about. And that also brings up the earlier point I said, that IoT is not a specific thing. It's targeting the areas, the information that you care about. Another great example was also at Synergy this year, Meet the Experts Theater. Chris Rogers, Case Baggerman, and Ingmar were doing some great IoT discussion. And this particular segment, in case of fire, they were showing a flame sensor in a data center. You hold up, in this case, a match to it. And what it does is it takes your workloads running virtualized on Nutanix and moves them to a different data center because it sensed a flame. And now when you start to say, is this a toy, is this a joke, that is an incredible application, that sensing an environmental condition and then moving your workloads, well, users will not see any interruption, and you avoided a potential disaster. Pretty amazing. John Moody, also at Synergy this year, ran the Makerspace and was demoing an RGB Corsair keyboard that he got to be monitoring a live XenApp environment. So based on the state of the XenApp farm and its performance level, your keyboard would tell you different information. John Smith, this just came out, I think yesterday, definitely this week, has his blog Wired Data, and he's taking a combination of extra hop, which is monitoring packets on the wire, and the concept is the truth is on the wire, and looking at these behavior of this data, in this case flash content, to see if it contains ransomware threat. And he integrates it to OctaBlue so that it goes out to the internet, checks for the information about this site, packages it all together into a dossier and an email, and sends you, within seconds, go see his video, within seconds you get a complete report on what's happening, threats in your environment in real time, using something on site, messaging up to OctaBlue, and then messaging you with an amalgam of data. Really, really amazing stuff. And now Joe's got a demo for you.
I do.
That we're over to. And let me see. Now we're going to play it off of video for the sake of hoping it all works. So we're going to play you a video over this webinar. If it doesn't work, we'll provide the link to it, and it is on YouTube as well. But hopefully this will work, and we're going to run it now.
This recording, we're going to show how to use OctaBlue to launch a Citrix application using the Citrix receiver. And to make this a little bit more interesting, we're going to go ahead and add the Amazon Echo to help us launch the application. So let's go ahead and get started. Alexa, tell Octa-Core to launch Notepad.
Okay,
We can see that the flow executed, and it looked like Notepad started. Alexa, tell octa-core to launch calculator.
Okay.
And there we go. And so that is using OctaBlue to launch the Citrix Zen application built by a Amazon Echo.
Thank you, Joe. That's really pretty awesome. So we're ahead of schedule, which is great. So we wanted to open it up for more questions and discussion. And I'll go ahead and look in the questions tab of the webinar. That's where you should post some questions. Hi, Tobias. Yes, this is pretty neat. Hi, Peter. And Chris Rogers says we should see his Amazon shopping list. Well, I think we kind of know what it looks like because we've had many of them as well. But you can go ahead and post some questions now if you like.
The question is Chris, are you using the Amazon Echo to build your shopping list?
This is an important question.
There's some things like the Amazon Dot that you can only buy through the Amazon Echo.
Right.
Well, at least order.
Right, exactly.
So while we're waiting, so let's talk a little bit more about the actual Citrix products and OctaBlue.
Great point. Yeah. Yep.
I actually had a couple more demos I wanted to record, but unfortunately, things are in transition right now. You wanna how do you put it? Explain some of the difficulties that you had when you were putting some of your demos together.
Yeah. So frameworks are rapidly evolving, and technically, the OctaBlue framework is not. It's still in a beta state.
Yeah.
So as you do these things, you have to. I saw a discussion from Kevin Kelly, the guy who started Wired magazine. He writes some really interesting books and looking at the future. And one of the things he says is going forward, you just can't keep up with knowledge. You're always going to be a beginner. And IoT and the maker community is about a different mindset. It's about you're going to have to fail. You're going to have to build things, and they're going to break, then you learn to fix them. And in this time frame, IoT is coming up. There's different frameworks, there's different ways of approaching it, and it's still early stage. But it's not early stage to where you can't use it. It's just you have to expect growing pains. You may have to change a framework you're using, or there may be an update to the back end, that changes things. Is that what you're referring to, Joe? Is just the idea that it's in flux?
Yeah, because if we look on Monday night, we see a bunch of these Citrix products like Insight Center, Director, little objects that you can integrate with OctaBlue, and then the next night, half of those are gone.
There's more questions down here.
Okay.
So we'll pop down to Tobias's comment and question about security in IoT, and can we address the concern and what's being considered for the future, like two-factor auth, more security than obscure URLs, etc. Well, I'm not a security expert, but my take on this is that it's no different than anything else. It's like we already have security challenges. We already know what they are. Ciphers and encryption are rapidly evolving and becoming new generation. You have to stay up with them. I think IoT is no different. Now, when you think about some of these off-the-shelf consumer things, getting access to your house, yeah, that definitely needs more attention. But I think the security concerns and issues are the same as every other technology. I don't think they're unique to IoT. There's just more of them. So I think that security experts and product vendors have to with secure by design from the beginning. And but it is going to be a problem. It is already a problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the sessions at Synergy this year, they brought in a security expert, and one of the things that I'm at a loss for his name, so I apologize for that. One of the things that he said was, there's going to be a point in time we're going to have such massive computing processing that usernames and passwords are going to essentially be useless. The amount of computing processing that we have will be ahead of what we can do to try to secure environments. So one of the things that we have to start thinking about is, okay, it's not if we're going to get hacked, but if it's not how do you put it? If it's possible for it to get hacked, or when will we get hacked, and if we get hacked, what happens, right? So if we're going to lose data, and let's assume that that's a real possibility, how much data do we lose? How quickly do we lose that data? And what people can do with that data if they were able to obtain it.
Gotcha.
So when we think about sensor data from an IoT perspective, do you need to encrypt every little ones and zeros? Maybe. How important is that one sensor, right? If you have multiple sensors and one sensor gets hacked, why can't we have the other sensors report back and have a majority consensus? It's like 3 out of 4 say it's on, the fourth one got hacked and it's now being fed bogus data. We have multiple sensory inputs that we can aggregate and make better decisions from. So if somebody did a tap on 1 or 2 sensors, what is the loss, right?
Yep.
Is there a way we can mitigate some of these losses and or bad data being injected in?
It's a complex issue. The benefits and the functionality that IoT offers also brings greater risk as you expose more devices. So honestly, we don't know. We're trying to sound smart. It's a tough question. It has to be dealt with. But every product, every vendor needs to do it inherently in what they're working on. John Smith posted, what is the on-premise device you are using if OctaBlue is in the cloud? It's a great question. It pretty much can be whatever you want it to be. The concept or the code base would be called a GateBlue, a gateway that talks to OctaBlue. So you can have a device that talks to many different devices on site. It could be a Mac, a PC, an Arduino, a Raspberry Pi, many different things. But you also can have devices speak directly to OctaBlue. For example, they can just send a webhook. So like IoT itself, it's extremely flexible and extensible. If you bought a motion sensor, for example, that can send a webhook, a JSON message, it could talk right to OctaBlue. Some devices are maybe by nature have to talk to a gateway first. But it all depends on the device you're using, and it's very, very flexible.
Yeah, and if you look this week, they're rolling out what they call the new connector factory, which are basically, they're moving away from the whole GateBlue concept, and each individual thing basically is an installable package that acts kind of as that mesh blue gateway between your local on-prem device and the cloud itself.
Yep. Another question from Michael is, does Citrix have any products or features planned around OctaBlue? I can't speak for Citrix. We don't work for them, but they do have the automation store, and so you can actually just download automations. And Joe created a great one around security. It may be a good addresses Tobias's concern in one sense. You want to explain the automation you created?
One of the things that we like to do as Citrix consultants when we're setting up a Zen app and desktop NetScaler gateway deployment is we've been hardening the NetScaler gateway. So we've been going to a website called SSL Labs, and there's a few blog posts on the Citrix website, and a couple other people like Anton has a guide on how to configure your NetScaler gateway to get what we call an A+ rating. So they do like a letter grade on SSL Labs, and if you make these particular changes or these security modifications on your NetScaler, you get a better grade. And the goal is to get an A+, right? If you're doing SSL Labs. So the one thing about security, it's a moving target. So you might get an A+ today, but tomorrow some new exploit comes out, and that bumps your rating down to a B, right? And so you're like, okay, what do I need to change? It's not like you can go out and manually go run this SSL Labs report every day. So one of the things I did was I created an OctaBlue flow that uses the SSL Labs API, and once a day, it'll go and invoke a report for your website and then email that to you when it's done. So every day you can get an email in your inbox that says, hey, this is your grades for today for this particular website.
So that's a great example of why IoT matters. So one of the things Joe does extremely well, he has a lot of advanced skills in Citrix integration, but one of them is helping our clients secure their environments, especially their NetScalers. And what we're seeing over and over is based on defaults of netscalers or older implementations. The ciphers and the certs are not up to date. And the site that was considered secure by OpenSSL Labs a month ago is not anymore. And what an amazing automation that this thing can just run and tell you how you grade, right? So there's a perfect example of you take something that matters to you in your environment, in your day-to-day, and you automate it.
Another thing that I've been working on is monitoring from a cloud perspective, right? So we can do monitoring with the Citrix tool, and with Octoblue, you can monitor different components. But when you think of external services, right, especially those that are going to be globally server load balanced, GSLBs between sites, it's kind of hard to monitor from the inside on-prem, right? To say, is this particular entry point up and going, and this entry point up and going? You can only do so much from the inside, but Octoblue's in the cloud. So built a little API that'll go and monitor your websites, either your NetScaler gateway, your website, and actually tell you if this site is up or down, or this site's up or down. Now you can use your tool inside, go hit that API, and see whether your site is accessible from a cloud perspective.
So let me point out something important about that. As we were kind of half kidding earlier, is IoT about robots and boards and LEDs. Here Joe's talking about a process that just runs in Octoblue, just a piece of code using some off-the-shelf APIs that's running on the outside, testing your environment. So he didn't even expose anything. In fact, he's specifically having it run on the outside with no dependency on the inside to check security. So there, it just shows you the flexibility. I'm going to address some other questions that are coming up here. Drag and drop interface, is there a Visual Studio-like editor? The Octoblue framework is visual. Now you can drill down and write all kinds of codes and connect to all kinds of APIs.
Do you have it open?
I don't have it open. I don't want to mess up the webinar. But you can go to octoblue.com or citrixcloud.com. Under lab sections, you can get to Octoblue.
I'm not familiar with the Visual Studio like editor, but if you want to compare it to something, it's like video on steroids.
Yeah.
Would that be a good analogy?
Yeah, exactly. You just take visual objects and connect them with wires. And I guess we should have had that up. We should have thought of that. But this will make you have to go and sign up and try it out. You'll see that you just take icons and drag and drop them. So for example, if you wanted to check the stock market, you know, if this stock ticker number hits this value, send me a text. And you would just take the stock ticker, put the threshold in, the stock symbol, and you drag a wire over to the SMS. You put your cell phone number in and the message it's sent. I don't know if we can switch over. So it is very, very visual, like you're asking. Cynthia asks, what are Citrix products that are aligned to enable IoT? Question is specific to the version, maybe XenApp, Zen Desktop, or Zen Mobile. The base minimum version, tested and certified. It's a little bit more open-ended. You're using APIs, so there is some early director integration. So you'd be getting that data from director versus from the servers directly, but you can get it directly, so it's really a different set of APIs. Any comment, Joe?
A few. There's nothing really as far as certified, tested and certified. The Octoblue guys are really trying to get that thing up and going for each of the different products, and they're only as good as the APIs that Citrix has built. And I know Citrix is working on building a better, more comprehensive REST API around all of the products. But if you want something to start off with quick and easy, the NetScaler is an easy one because the Nitro API is a RESTful interface. So it's easy to do REST calls to a NetScaler VPX or SDX versus trying to do one to a XenApp, because XenApp doesn't have a REST API. One of the demos I wanted to try to show, but it's in transition, so I wasn't able to record it last night, is I was going to show how to manipulate a Citrix XenApp and desktop environment using the PowerShell thing. So that's one of the different ways you can try to interface with the current product. it's finding a bridge to an API like PowerShell that they're currently.
So Joe, you showed a demo where you asked the Amazon Echo, Alexa, launch an app for me.
Correct.
How did you do that? What tools did you use, and what would that look like in the editor? There's a receiver integration, right?
Yeah, so you have Citrix receiver on the local box. There wasn't any particular integration because the receiver is the Mac version. I couldn't find any switches that allowed you to, like in the old days, you had the old program neighborhood. You had tons of switches. You could do all kinds of automation and scripting around it. It doesn't seem like a lot of that stuff exists anymore, which is kind of unfortunate because now is the time that really have that stuff. So one of the tricks behind that was instead of launching the receiver, you launch the app. And in order to get an app, to show an application up as like an app, was to make it a favorite in the Citrix receiver.
Oh, cool.
So it actually created a shortcut, and essentially launching the shortcut for that. So on the Amazon, there's a little bit, if you have an Amazon Echo, you need to go to Alexa skill sets, set that up, and then you need to set up an OAuth with the Octablue site, and then you can integrate the Octablue has an echo in and an echo out. So you can use those two things to receive your input, process it, and then respond with the results.
So Joe makes it sound easy, but there are more out-of-the-box ones in the automation store, like the one he created for OpenSSL Labs, and there'll be more and more. The community is contributing more of them, and we are close to getting to the point where there are some off-the-shelf built-in things, and we think that's going to work best coming from director integration, and that's rapidly evolving as we talk.
And I do expect more integration with the Citrix products because that would close to one of the 4 focuses that Citrix has going forward is with the cloud, mobility, big data analytics, and IoT. So IoT was a big spot on the lower right-hand corner of
Absolutely.
that chart.
Absolutely. Now, also, we got a question from Jeff about there are many different sensors, but what sensor did you use for the Nutanix demo for lighting the match? And Ingmar and Case did that. And I don't know exactly, but it's called flame sensor. And if you hashtag flame sensor, there seems to be a bunch of stuff out there. So I think it's maybe an open source thing a lot of people are doing. But we're going to put up some links later, and you can also get more details off of their blogs and tweets about it. But it's just a little simple device, and there's countless types. The obvious ones are temperature, flame. What else? I'm blanking. But there's sensors to do just about anything. Is a light on? Is a light off? And all of them are very, very simple analog or digital interfaces. So a simple board like an Arduino can absolutely deal with the data from just about any sensor type. And if you just start looking around, that's why we're kidding about the Amazon shopping list, because if you start looking, you'll find all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So it's really a wide open world, but that particular one I believe is called flame sensor.
Mm-hmm. And if you order, they have these little kits. So you can buy an Arduino by itself or a Raspberry Pi by itself. You can also buy these like, these little kits that come with a bunch of different sensors and buttons and different types of input, outputs.
And Chris Rogers is saying, look on Amazon for the 37 sensor starter kit. Wow, that's a lot of sensors. Thank you, Chris.
So essentially, even if you don't have one that's pre-built into a particular box like the Nutanix may already have one, I don't know. But if they don't, you can build your own. And it doesn't cost that much to get yourself a little Arduino board, a sensor, and plug that in.
Absolutely. Jeff also asked, are there any nice cookbooks for Octablue and integrating it with XenApp and Zen Desktop? They are coming. The community is contributing them as we speak. Some of the things you're seeing, Joe, are up there.
Do you want to talk about the community bits?
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a minute because we're going to cover the community after we finish the QA. I think we're almost there. But we're asking for people to contribute, and Citrix is working very, very quickly on getting to that point. The automation store that you'll find out on the lab section of Citrix Cloud has some examples. It's early stage, but there are some, and you can definitely do things today. It's coming rapidly. We'll finish up on questions. I'll look through a few more here. Tobias, the prospects of a good public library of modules is important, but how will data integrity and sanitizing of the content be maintained? I frankly have no idea. It's not my expertise. Any comment, Joe?
I'm not sure what he means by that, but
well, maybe he can add a clarifying concept. But I think he means when you suck all this data out of your environment, how do you make sure that it's not misused somehow in the cloud or by somebody else? Like think of Facebook. You know, when you post all your most personal thoughts, they're being misused by big data analytics to sell you stuff.
well, that goes back to our earlier security discussion, does it not? Like if you obviously have to try to protect the data as much as you can, but if it gets compromised, what the mitigation or the loss mitigation surrounding that, how fast can that data be pulled or sucked out?
He's also adding, I thought there was going to be a repository eventually for community-created flows. There are now. The automation store is the repository. And you can share flows within the OctaBlue framework as well.
I'm not 100% sure, but from what I understand, there's obviously a flow store, so you can go and you can create a flow and push that out. Other community members can come and download that and import those flows and use that. But from the sitting side of it, I think what the goal with that is to build a core set of things that are managed and maintained by OctaBlue themselves, but then also allow other people to build things and put them up on the OctaBlue website, right? And allow people to download and utilize those particular things. So, you know, it's going to be hard for OctaBlue to justify, hey, I got a Myo band. Well, okay, how did that interact with NetApp and then desktop? If it does, then they could, you know, push down the line. But maybe somebody really wants to have a Myo band. They can maintain the code for that connector and put that up there, and other people can now leverage and download and leverage those particular connectors.
This is probably a good transition point because Joe's mentioning the Myo. And Chris Rogers did some great demos with this. It's a band you put on your arm, and it senses your electrical muscle movement and outputs information. So the example is you can take just about anything and write for it. Maybe somebody will want to maintain that connector, right? Maybe it'll be community contributed. Maybe that wouldn't be Citrix, but you can plug that connector into, for example, a director integration. But on the flip side, there's amazing potential, amazing ability to contribute and to do what you want. But Tobias is in the mood to ask the hard questions, and we're going to give him the final one, which is, right, so who checks these to make sure they are not malicious?
Isn't that true of anything, not just OctaBlue or OctaBlue connectors, but any open source library, product, application out there? How do we know that somebody has an index to the backdoor in Linux, right? The idea of open source is it's open. Somebody can go in and look at the code. All the code for OctaBlue is already up in the cloud. You can go, most of it's open source.
Right.
There's a few pieces that are not,
so,
but most of the stuff, like all the connectors and stuff, you can go out and you can download them and you can make your own modification to them. And I've done that a few times where I got that PowerShell one. It's like, it's not feeding me the right information, so I make a few changes, send the code back to Mohib and say, hey, here's the modifications I made, you know, make it better.
Right. So, you know, the bottom line is we don't know. I think what Tobias is hitting on is the hard security questions, but I would also say that it's conceivably possible that a framework like OctaBlue or something you write could be done on-prem solely. So perhaps for sensitive environments, you start to look at the old, you know, air gap type mentality, is it isn't in the cloud. But those are hard questions for our industry as a whole, and we thank you very, very much. We're going to do a couple of more informational slides as we wind down and to kind of show you how to get involved. We would recommend that you look at a local makerspace. We're very fortunate in Arizona to have an incredible community here. Our favorite place is Heatsink Labs. There's also Gangplank. But these are places that are filled with tools and enthusiasts and knowledge and people. And they're not owned by anybody. Usually they're community run, like a co-op. And it's incredible what you can learn and do. Everything from digital multimeters, laser cutters, 3D printers, guys who know all kinds of code frameworks hang out there. So look around your environment for a makerspace, see what's happening. Check out the user groups. Obviously, CUGC is awesome, but there's also some meetups. Again, in Phoenix, we have a great community of developers. We attend the Phoenix IoT, and there's several others. Check out octablue.com. If you go in, create an account, you'll see the visual editor, and you can see some tutorials as well. And now they're moving the community platform for collaboration to octablue-community.slack.com. So that's a Slack channel, or whatever you call it in Slack parlance, that you can join. So get that URL, go ahead and join, and start asking questions and contributing. And then be active in social media. A lot of the guys that we know that we featured here, and there are many others, tweet a lot, blog, compare information, and share data. So we'd love to hear from you and to hear what you're doing and what your questions are. We'll give you, again, our contact information. Twitter's probably a good way to do it. We appreciate all the involvement and the great questions today. And thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, guys. Go ahead and wrap things up. I want to let everybody know. Oh, I have a mistake on my slide. Sorry, there's not an Amazon Echo winner. That was a trick. Let you know that today's recording is going to be available shortly on mycugc.org, and that we also have opened up a forum discussion thread in the events forum. I stuck the link in the chat window if you guys want to start talking about it or ask Joe and Steve more questions. You can certainly put those there, and you can follow us on Twitter as well at mycugc. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Joe and Steve. That was a really entertaining and great presentation, and we appreciate you guys doing that for us today.
Thank you, Stephanie.
We'd like to do so in the future as Citrix become more integrated with this. We'll be able to start showing more and more different integration points and different things that you can do with the Octablue, within desktop, and then as some of those connectors come together.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, that would be great. We love all this interaction and involvement. I'm looking forward to seeing more stuff. Okay, well, if that's it from everybody, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar, and we will see you guys again soon at the next user share or connect. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.